History of World War II. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're embarking on a journey back in time, to an era that shaped the world we live in today. We're going to explore the vast and complex story of World War II, a conflict that spanned continents, involved millions, and left an indelible mark on human history. So, grab a seat, and let's dive into one of the most pivotal periods of the 20th century. Our story begins not in 1939, but in the ashes of the First World War. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was meant to bring lasting peace. Instead, its harsh terms on Germany crippling reparations, territorial losses, and the infamous war guilt clause fostered deep resentment and economic instability. Throughout the 1920s and 30s, this bitterness, combined with the global Great Depression, created fertile ground for radical ideologies. In Italy, Benito Mussolini and his fascist party rose to power, promising to restore Roman glory. In Japan, an expansionist military regime began its conquest of Asia, starting with the invasion of Manchuria in 1931. And in Germany, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party capitalized on national humiliation and economic desperation. Seizing power in 1933, Hitler's vision was one of racial purity and Lebensraum, or living space, for the German people, which he planned to take by force from Eastern Europe. For years, the international community, haunted by the memory of World War I, adopted a policy of appeasement. They watched as Hitler rearmed Germany, reoccupied the Rhineland, and annexed Austria in 1938, in violation of the Versailles Treaty. The infamous Munich Agreement later that year allowed Hitler to take the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia, with British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain famously declaring he had achieved peace for our time. But this peace was tragically short-lived. Appeasement had only emboldened Hitler. The final straw came on September 1st, 1939. After signing a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union to avoid a two-front war, Germany invaded Poland. This time, Britain and France could no longer stand by. They declared war on Germany, and the Second World War officially began in Europe. The early years of the war were defined by the stunning success of Germany's new military tactic, Blitzkrieg or lightning war, using a combination of fast-moving tanks, dive bombers, and infantry. German forces overran Poland in weeks. After a quiet period known as the Phony War, the Blitzkrieg was unleashed on Western Europe in the spring of 1940. Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg fell in rapid succession. The biggest shock came when France, considered to have one of the most powerful armies in the world, was defeated in just 6 weeks. Over 300,000 Allied soldiers were miraculously evacuated from the beaches of Dunkirk. But continental Europe was now under Nazi domination. Britain, led by the defiant Winston Churchill, stood alone. Throughout 1940, the Battle of Britain raged in the skies. The Royal Air Force fought heroically against the German Luftwaffe, ultimately preventing a German invasion and proving that the Nazi war machine was not invincible. Churchill's powerful speeches rallied the British people, promising them nothing but blood, toil, tears, and sweat in the fight for survival. While Europe was embroiled in conflict, tensions were escalating across the globe. Japan continued its aggressive expansion in Asia, aiming to create a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, which was essentially a vast empire. The United States, officially neutral, watched with growing concern. President Franklin D. Roosevelt sought to aid the Allies, instituting the Lend-Lease Act, which provided crucial military supplies to Britain and other nations fighting the Axis powers. America was becoming the arsenal of democracy. The entire course of the war changed dramatically in 1941. In June, Hitler made a fateful decision. Betraying his pact with Stalin, he launched Operation Barbarossa, massive invasion of the Soviet Union. This opened up the vast Eastern Front, which would become the largest and bloodiest theater of the war, consuming immense resources from both sides. Then, on the morning of December 7, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack was devastating, but it failed to destroy the American aircraft carriers, which were out at sea. The next day, a furious United States declared war on Japan. In response, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States, officially bringing the industrial and military might of America into the conflict. The war was now truly a global one. The year 1942 marked a turning point. The tide began to shift in favor of the Allies. In the Pacific, the U.S. Navy scored a decisive victory at the Battle of Midway, crippling the Japanese fleet and halting their eastward expansion. On the Eastern Front, the brutal Battle of Stalingrad began. After months of horrific street-to-street fighting in freezing conditions, the German Sixth Army was encircled and forced to surrender in early 1943. This was a catastrophic defeat for Germany, from which they would never fully recover on the Eastern Front. In North Africa, British and American forces defeated Rommel's Afra Corps in Operation Torch, securing the continent and paving the way for an invasion of Italy. From 1943 onwards, the Allies were on the offensive. After securing North Africa, they invaded Sicily and then mainland Italy, leading to Mussolini's overthrow. Italy surrendered, though German forces continued to fight fiercely on the peninsula. On the Eastern Front, the Red Army began its relentless push westward, driving the German army back toward Berlin. The final chapter in Europe began on June 6, 1944. In the largest amphibious invasion in history, over 150,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy, France, codenamed Operation Overlord. This monumental effort opened the long-awaited Western Front. Despite facing brutal German resistance, the Allies secured a foothold and began the liberation of France, reaching Paris by August. With the Soviets advancing from the east and the Allies from the west, Germany was caught in a vice. Hitler's last desperate gamble, the Battle of the Bulge in the winter of 1944, failed. As Allied bombers pounded German cities into rubble, the end drew near. In late April 1945, with Soviet troops fighting in the streets of Berlin, Adolf Hitler took his own life in his bunker. On May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered. The war in Europe was over. Victory in Europe Day, or V-Day, was celebrated around the world. But the war in the Pacific raged on. Fighting against the Japanese was incredibly fierce, with island-hopping campaigns across the Pacific resulting in heavy casualties. Despite being pushed back to their home islands, Japan's leadership refused to surrender, preparing for a final, bloody defense of their homeland. To avoid a costly invasion and bring the war to a swift end, U.S. President Harry Truman made a difficult and controversial decision. In August 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The devastation was unprecedented. Faced with this new, terrifying weapon and the Soviet invasion of Manchuria, Emperor Hirohito finally announced Japan's unconditional surrender on August 15, 1945. The Second World War was finally over. The aftermath was staggering. The war cost over 60 million lives, both military and civilian, and left entire continents in ruins. It also exposed the depths of human cruelty through the systematic horror of the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews and millions of others were murdered by the Nazi regime. The world was forever changed. The old European empires crumbled, and two new superpowers emerged: the United States and the Soviet Union, setting the stage for the decades-long Cold War. World War II is a vast and sobering subject, a story of immense tragedy, but also of incredible courage, sacrifice, and resilience. It serves as a powerful reminder of the costs of hatred and aggression, and the importance of working together for peace and freedom. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical journey today. I know this was a lot of information, but it's a story that deserves to be told and remembered. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what part of the war you find most compelling. Until next time, stay curious.